When you're in love, you can conquer anything.
But also when you're in love, like, it's funny because you know that when you fall in love with someone, you're also being so vulnerable because you know that your heart will have to break at some point, either when it ends or when they pass away or whatever the circumstance is. Like, that's the really special thing about love, because you're basically saying, like, I'm willing to be in pain to love you.
And Harley was able to see the meridian grid, and he was able to see how that was working on him at that time. And then he was saying how we change the grid, which we do. We do it through trauma, we do it through meditation positively, we do it all in all different ways and shapes and forms.
The Archangel Gabriel said, you come in with all the tools. You come in with these tools. You work through them. And you'll make many mistakes. But the mistake is the gift. You've got to remember that is a gift, because we learn from it. We wake up.
It's sleeping in its nest before it wakes up. Touch it gently, you want it, feel it completely calm, so you can hold it in your palm and help it grow just like it was born to be. Come, 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 come. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Welcome to 111 Live. I'm Nicola Lewis. This is Josie Vinten.
Hi.
And this is Gaynor Thompson.
Hi.
111 Life is 3 spiritual women from 3 generations sharing our knowledge and sharing all the pathways of what we have learned throughout our life. So this is Gaynor, my mum, who has had experiences all her life, and this is a little bit about Gaynor.
I was psychic from a very young age. I've done many things within my life, psychically, teaching, had metaphysical shops, and work with the public. I've known no other way other than working with the public. I am a future person, and I've been to many, many countries and worked abroad. And what I do is what I love. And that is in a nutshell.
Love it.
And over to you, Josie. So a little bit about you.
Okay, so I'm Josie Vinten. I'm only 22, so I'm the youngest of all us 3. And I wasn't psychic from a young age like either of you two, but I think I've fallen in as I've got older. Or maybe I was, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know, I think I disagree with that. Just sort of like giving...
Oh, yeah.
I would say this is my description of Josie, and Josie will cut in, I know.
Yeah.
But how I see her is she's a very old soul. Her awareness and her skills and her art are truly psychic, and I know that from what you've told me as a little girl, you've had some brilliant experiences, and I do think that you're very psychic. I do think you've had it since dot, but it's how you've expressed it, and that's maybe through your art, and through how you've become a very focused individual on your skills and gifts.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I thought that was actually really good, Nicola. You summed me up better than I can sum up myself.
She's also my illustrator. I have written books, children's books, and I've written a book on my life. And she's a very good illustrator.
And as well as an illustrator, for a 22-year-old young lady who has just said that there's not much in there, she is an amazing astrologer, and there's a massive part of 111 that's going to incorporate her gifts and skills within that field. And I will especially share some of the profound insight that she's had and the things that have actually happened to me and come true through her astrological chart readings.
Well, I feel like with the astrology, that is a lot of the time like a big doorway into the psychic realm for me. And I think it's interesting because of like our contrasting upbringings. Like, you two were both brought up by very psychic, spiritual parents. And my mum, as you would have seen on the last episode we did, she does have psychic tendencies, had these experiences, but that wasn't her dominant way of life. So I think I'm very physical in the way that I work with spirit. Being a Taurus rising, I'm a very earthy person, and I like things that are tangible and real. I'm very like sensitive in terms of like smells and touch and the senses realm. But since meeting Nicola and Gaynor, they've both really opened me up even more to the psychic world and sort of given me permission to express that and have an avenue to understand so much more about myself and about the insights I get, and they've really given me confidence to follow my path as an astrologer. And I think another part of 111 Life, that's a gift that we can all give to you, having a safe space to express these insights and things.
And hoping that you come forward with some of the experiences that you may or may not have shared, but bring it out into the light, because there's so much that we experience that we don't express, but has some profound meaning. But just a little bit about my background. I've spent my life analysing people, and I've also analysed their health, I've analysed their characters, and I've drawn on many different therapies and skills to understand not only myself, but those that come to me for help. And I've had certain points in my life where I've been really poorly. And in those times, I've dug deep and learned a lot about how your body speaks your mind. This also took me into a healing world of Reiki back in 1996. And from there, I've read and coached and helped people. And that really is what I'm about. I'm about healing people's wounds.
What?
Did you go and get something to eat?
I had a banana earlier, didn't I?
Yeah, she had a banana.
I'll bring some gear out.
That's prana. Each chakra has a life force energy and a colour. So when we're working like from the base, you know, you're working with the physical body. And then when you're working with the sacral, you're working with the emotional and spiritual body. And then when you're working with your gut, you're working with the solar plexus, you're working with the mind and the air, and you're working with the mental body. When you come to the heart is connected to all. So it's the centre of your energy field, and it is connected to the whole thing. No matter what, everything is a cycle. So these energy centres are there to teach us, and these colours that we engage in these centres and these auric bodies bring us into an understanding. And it's really interesting, because if you really go back over your life, you know, like
thank you.
You can see when you've really sort of like been a certain energy or a certain element.
Oh, definitely.
And you can really see how, you know, that experience is happening through those energy fields.
Well, if I think about it, like the 7th year you're in the crown, aren't you? So if I look back to 14 years old when I was in the crown energy again, that was when really like I went through my first relationship, and breaking away from that was actually when I got into my spirituality, and I got really like hyper spiritual.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and I like really like dived into it. I really like used the intuition. I was really into like psychic powers. Like I would literally be obsessed with like making plants grow. Like I would actually like I'd get this stoned and cut that out, and stare at my cactus, and I'd be like I could see it, and I was like, oh my god, I'm actually making it grow. I probably wasn't, but like, I was so into like that psychic energy. And with
What
you,
am I in then?
So 7 sevens are 49. So
That's 13.
and then so right now you're
in it.
so right now you're in the heart. This whole past year has been about your love.
Been heartbreaking year.
there is a saying, something about the heart breaks so it can break open. That was it.
When you're in love, your heart is open. When you're in love, you can conquer anything.
But also when you're in love, like, it's funny because you know that when you fall in love with someone, you're also being so vulnerable because you know that your heart will have to break at some point, either when it ends or when they pass away or whatever the circumstance is. Like, that's the really special thing about love, because you're basically saying, like, I'm willing to be in pain to love you. Oh, that was quite profound, wasn't it?
I don't know where to get that from.
I just thought I'd tell you as well, so I shouldn't really say this, but this week obviously I interact with different people within my work field, but I can't obviously incorporate in my daily job the spiritual in an outward way. I can in an inward way, but I come across the patient and I keep looking at the hands because I'm going to be doing this hand thing. And right in her Venus, which is her relationship area, I looked down and there was the letter B. It looked P, but
Didn't
then
mean bastard, did it?
No, B. Anyway, I spoke to her and I said, how are you? And are your family coming up to see you? Yeah. I said, oh, what have you got? She said, a couple of girls. I said, oh, what are their names? Blah, blah, blah. And then I went, I said, is your husband still here? No. I said, oh, what's his name? What was his name?
Barry.
Bill.
Bill.
Right? So I'm now, so like, this is great for the group because obviously it's really interesting because although you've got all those core lines and placements and everything else, that isn't how I work with it. And although I know what they are and what they're not, the hand starts to reveal pictures like the clouds in the sky.
Yeah, like you saw an Eiffel Tower in mine once.
So
And I've always
And
had an
don't
affinity
forget-
of France.
I know it's probably a bit extortionate for you, but like just listen to it because it really is an experience I had. And the reason that I did this, by the way, was I was on TikTok, and obviously, you know, lots of things on TikTok are conspiracy theory or whatever you want to do. But there was, I had a night where there was lots of people, and because I was watching it, telling me about their near-death experience. And every time they spoke, I've had the same experience, but I didn't have a near-death experience. I was going through a death of a way of being.
Boom.
And it was the World Cup, it was Italy, it was 1990. You had gone away to Tenerife with Dad. Darren got in a car and went to Italy to watch the World Cup, and I went and stayed at June Kamara's. Anyway.
Oh God, yeah, I remember that.
Right, and I went in this bedroom and it was like a harvest colour, very warming, and I loved her house. It was a very spiritual house. I did it. It was
in
a really,
Britain Road, brilliant.
it was absolutely amazing. And at the time, I was just so mixed up about life and God knows what else. And then I had a dream. And I had a dream, and I'm not going to tell it all, I'm going to just let you listen to the poem, but I had a dream. And in the dream, I was a little boy. And I knew it was me, but I was a little boy. And you know when you get like a group of mates and you go to like a place that's an open plain and there's this mud mound. And I had this red top on, whatever it was, and I put my bike down.
What a good memory.
Yeah, this is the dream. I know it's so vivid. And I put my bike down, and the sky was pungent blue with big fat white clouds in the sky. And I laid back on the mound, like I just laid back like that, and I just went boom.
The iron
And I went, and then all of a sudden, I was everything. I was everything.
Oh
Yes.
my God.
I was everything and nothing.
Nothing.
And I had no attachment, no pain.
Oh
I was
my
in
God.
pure love. I was going,
And
oh
a
my
wonderful
God, there's no
feeling.
problem. There's no problems.
No.
There's no problems. There's no, I know who I am, but I'm everywhere. I'm a part of it all, right? And I literally I can't tell you, the people that talk about when they meet God, they meet Jesus, whatever it was, I met the universe. I met it in its purest of essences of love. That I've never ever had an experience like it to this day, and I never forget it. And I called it clouds in the sky. But then I went on to do Reiki, and Reiki is universal life force energy, but you can translate Reiki in many different ways in saying it's like moving energy. And I had become literally the moving energy of that universal life force, and that was it. And then that's what inspired me. And then what happened was I kept listening to these people having these near-death experiences, and all of a sudden in my head I was like, clouds in the sky, clouds in the sky. You know, I was thinking, I've had the same experience as these people. I didn't have a car crash. But I had a dream, and this dream
I was
been
sitting
with
on
me.
a rock.
I was in this dream, and whether everybody gets it at some point in their life, I would love to know. But this is my true story, and this is how I felt. It doesn't matter what way you look at it. It's not personal. It's how I felt, and this is what I experienced.
I had a dream, so true it seemed. 19 at the time, I was not feeling fine. Abandoned and sick to the bone, but feeling so alone. On that day, I went to sleep. Little did I know how I would weep. In our tears, we can release our fears back into the universe, unlocking our curse, just like the nurture of a nurse. In this dream is my truth that came to me in my youth. As clear as day, my dream has never gone away. Listen to what it has to say. I had a dream, so true it seemed. Clouds in the sky, we do not die. This experience made me cry. I flew above, free as a dove. It was truly heaven, full of unexplainable love. A dream I was in is where it begins. A young boy, it was me. But how could that be? I felt so free. Yeah, I knew it was me. Laying back on a mud mound, a dream so profound. Looking up at the sky, up I went and flew high. No form was I. There was no fear out here. Weightless, connected to the undeniable greatness. Attachment had gone, no pain or wrong. I just knew I belonged. Moving in the air, the feeling of being everywhere. In this dream I was whole, so real, no control. Set free was my soul. Clouds in the sky, we do not die. Watch them shift and turn into mist. We will always exist. This was my dream. I hope you know what it means.
Oh my god.
No,
that was
but-
giving me feelings, but that's triggered a memory for me.
No,
Don't
can
know
I
about
just
you.
say to you, I've got to say it, because that's what we come to, the part in the book, didn't
Yeah,
we?
the part. Well, actually, you've had a few, and like when we've
Yeah.
been writing your book,
But-
that's the repeated experience that you kept on having.
Yeah, it was unreal. That was in Sedona.
Everything and nothing.
I was everything, I was nothing. I knew that when you die,
Oh yeah,
something or other,
it's a knowing.
It's you're everything.
You're everything.
I became part of the rock.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I was the cloud in the
Yeah.
sky.
And
And
It's
the funny thing was, I wanted it. I wanted more.
Oh
But-
yeah, on that
but
one
I
I
want
come
it,
back.
but you can't. But it's still there. It
No,
don't
no,
leave
it never
you.
goes away.
It never goes away.
and
It's
it-
wonderful. You're free from all this mind.
Oh,
Free-
it's amazing.
It's
It was
free from-
amazing.
Even listening to that poem, I feel like I was feeling like a piece of that. Do you know what I mean?
I believe that they could go into
But
science.
that really triggered a memory for me, because as I was listening, I was just sort of like going into a zone. Obviously, you know, like, I smoked weed for about like 8 or 9 years. Like really struggled with it towards the end, like going back and forth. But I always remember like the first time I ever smoked it. I was with my brother. It was like March 30th or something, like years ago, maybe like 2030. I was with my brother and a good friend. And we smoked, and then we went and laid on this hill. It was a really beautiful sunny day, but like not too hot, not too cold. And then we laid on this hill and watched the clouds. And I just like felt such bliss. And when I was looking at the clouds, like they was changing to all different shapes. I could see a whale, and then it changed, and I could see a ship, and then I could see like all these different things. And I just realised as I was listening to that, like I had that experience, and I don't know if I would say like everything and nothing, but I think the reason I smoked weed for like so long after that is because I was like chasing that feeling again and again, and I never quite had it. I had an experience when I was in Ibiza. And me and my brother, I was about 15 at the time, and we was just walking along the beach, and we see a group of people sitting down. One of them's got bongos. It was quite late at night.
lovely.
One of them's like they're passing around a bottle of wine. They just start going, hey, and me being me, I'm like, oh, hey, go and sit with them. They're like passing the wine round. They're like playing their guitar. My brother's like exchanging with this guy because he plays guitar. And then they sold me some weed, but they were like lovely. That wasn't like the main thing, but a girl just offered. I was like, oh yeah, of course. It was called Green Poison, and I remember smoking it. I'm not saying like this is the same thing because it's drug induced, but like maybe
I
this
don't know.
is why.
It sounds like it.
Well, then I smoked it. We was walking on the beach. It was late, and I remember feeling like you said there was no problems in the world. Like there was nothing,
Yeah.
and I just felt so at peace. And it was like you said before, like it was gone as quickly as it came.
That's right.
But
yeah.
I think
Blink
that's
your eye,
why.
but it leaves an imprint.
Yeah, and it was like it was drug induced. And I remember writing about it in my journal after. But like I think that's why maybe people like, or even me, like chase the drugs or like
Yeah,
keep
of
doing it
course.
because you think you're gonna have that experience again. But especially with like the weed, I'm not advocating for it because it actually gave me a lot of mental health problems and fucked with me. But in those moments, because it was like giving me a bit of an escape and putting me into a different mindset, like it was freeing me from all this baggage just for that split second.
I wonder if you felt as emotional as me after that, because after that, I don't think I could stop crying for about 4 hours.
Really?
Nor could I.
I
God.
could not
Yeah,
stop
so-
crying.
It was the most
I
profound.
couldn't stop.
Well, no,
couldn't
it
stop.
wasn't. That's what I mean. I think it was different because it was drug induced. Like, I didn't necessarily have that. I've had it where I've, like, had experiences where I can't stop crying and things like that. But, actually, I have a story for you both. Not
Oh,
from
good.
me.
Come
And I
on.
think you'll have insight on this. So, my auntie actually told me it when we was at the spa. She said she goes and gets Reiki by this woman. Right, and she went there. It's in, like, a church, an old church in Westmoreland, actually. And she went in there the other day and she said that she saw a nun sitting there. She said she's never seen a nun before. She saw the nun and she said she just like got this overwhelming feeling that she wanted to cry. And I can't remember if she did cry, but she said like she wanted to burst out into tears. And I think she did. And she felt really embarrassed and she was really like, oh God, like why am I crying over this? Goes and sees a Reiki lady and is like, oh God, I'm so embarrassed. I've just seen this nun and I just wanted to burst out into tears. And I said to her, like, I think you were having like a spiritual awakening, like it was triggering something. But I said to her, I'll ask Nicola and Gaynor what they think about that. So
Right, so, okay, so going back, right the way back to when Mum and I first sat in circle, and when you go back to the old school ways of learning mediumship or learning, to sit in circle, we would call them guides. and those guys would come at a pungent point in your life when you needed them. Funny enough, do you remember when I see the nun on the ceiling indoors? So you're triggering also another story for me. But a nun is a relationship with God. She has a relationship with God, and I would just say that God comes in many guises. And the universe comes in many ways to present the Holy Spirit, or to present that God connection. And I think that when we're at a pinnacle point in our life, we have to see a form that we can process in our brain, because we can't perceive that other world because we aren't evolved enough yet. And I think that maybe when she went there, she was going for healing. But she saw a nun, and a nun is meant to be a pure vessel of teaching the ways of how to be married to God. And I have had many experiences since then, and one of them was not very long ago because of Andy. We went to the Benedict Church, and I sat with the nuns, and they do truly have... I mean, I know that there's lots of stories of Catholic schools, and there's lots of stories of not very nice nuns, but the ones that are really enlightened or have that total empathy and that intention, there is an absolute purity of love and abundance that oozes through them. They do not want for anything. They are purely there as a vessel to bring God to earth. So my answer to that, and I'm sure my mum will have another one, but my answer to her experience was maybe cleaning up her life, also knowing that she is protected, and also having that divine connection of you're gonna be all right.
Be true to thyself. Be true to thyself. I had Jesus Christ. He come so many times. When he came, he didn't say it was Jesus Christ. He came in, his eyes was the most beautiful blue, and my heart really, it blew open. And he'd come, and he'd sort of say everything was okay, but that I didn't have to do that. He didn't say that. It was totally in my head, in my imagination, but I could see him as a television screen there, and every time I was down, he would come in. I haven't seen him for a long time. But when he came in, he would come in, my heart would blow open, and he was coming in because I think that if we are true to ourselves, the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God, I think you're fine. I think you're protected. And at that particular time, I was protected.
Yeah.
No ifs, no buts. I was going through a funny stage, but it was almost like saying, I'm behind you.
Yeah.
Keep going. I am behind you.
Yeah.
Keep going. Everything is fine.
Yeah.
And now, no one can take that away because I see him. And the only reason I say is Jesus Christ, because I went to a church called St Margaret's on the Common. And on the wall was pictures of Jesus Christ, and that's how I see him. But it can be whoever comes, the eyes penetrate into the heart, and you can't take it away. You will not. I cannot take that part away from me.
Yeah.
And I think that through my earlier stages, I was guided.
Yeah.
I was so naive. I thought I knew it all. I knew nothing. I thought I knew it.
Yeah.
And then God comes along and he says, you speak really good, now fill it.
Oh my God, yeah.
Now fill it. And that's a different ballgame.
And I have a very big connection to God, and like I've always been interested in things like that, but not in the way that it's like, oh, you need to follow a set of rules. Yeah, it's not orthodox.
It's love. Everything is through love, through the heart chakra.
And God is always protecting you, like no matter what happens in your life, like you're guided on these paths, even if it's hard, even if you don't understand at the time, but it's leading you to the next thing, and you can either resist or you can go with it. And like God, you think about all these people who have gone through these like horrible experiences, but like they got through because like they were meant to. Do you know what I mean? They were meant to survive.
Here for the grace of God go I. Because no matter what experience, and Nicola has her experience, you have yours. I've had mine. Don't think you haven't. Don't think it's all been hunky-dory.
Oh,
because
I
it's
know.
been
I know it hasn't, Mum. I don't know if I don't.
No,
know
But-
but we've all got different things.
We've
haven't
all
we?
got different
Like you've
things.
had a lot of death. I haven't really experienced much death at all, and like obviously I know I will, but until then it is what it is. Like Nicola's had other ones. I've had other ones. Obviously I'm very early into my life, so we'll see what the journey beholds.
Let me just tell you something. When I was watching social media recently, it was saying about how some people talk about angels, and that they were saying, which is so unbelievable, because Harley said exactly the same thing to me when he was a child. He said there are angels that come to earth inside the body. And they are, and we did sort of like touch on this recently, they are either half angels, half protectors. And I recently watched something when they was talking about how angels do come in through our vehicle, through this vessel, to bring that energy back to earth and play a part, because they can't come in form, because they're not
They
They're
don't
not
come in
form.
incarnated.
No,
They're not
and
incarnated.
they're a different vibration, but they do work through they do work through our vehicle. And this is something that Harley told me at a very, very young age, and said about Granddad, my dad, and said, you know, he was put on this earth as an angel. He was not half human. He was put on the earth as an angel. He came in on that vibration, and this is
Rugged angel.
and this is being expressed across all forums of this kind of communication. And it's interesting because, again, I keep thinking about when I was doing healing on my dad, and Harley was able to see the meridian grid, and he was able to see how that was working on him at that time. And then he was saying how we change the grid, which we do it through trauma, we do it through meditation, positively, we do it all in all different ways and shapes and forms. And it's interesting because I just think, like, somewhere down the line, we are here having an experience, but that experience has to elevate. And no matter what you do through life, through whatever suffering there is, and Buddha says you suffer, and through the suffering...
No one on God's earth knock on anyone's door.
They all
have
suffered.
Yeah.
Everyone suffers. And that is where you learn. I don't, you know, it's a bit like good press, bad press. You remember the bad press more than you do the good press.
Yeah.
You remember the bad experiences more than you do the good experiences, because the bad experiences is where you have to learn, you have to elevate, you have to change, you have to reprogram you, and if you don't, it just keeps coming and coming, and then you either learn or you die.
Look
Yeah,
what
you learn or you die. I love that.
the Archangel Gabriel said, you come in with all the tools. You come in with these tools. You work through them. And you'll make many mistakes. But the mistake is the gift. You've got to remember that is the gift, because we learn from it. We wake up. We wake up from that gift. And then whatever happens, we come. It's like they showed me a mountain. You climb that mountain. And then they said, you've got to go to the bottom. I said, I'm not going to the bottom. I don't want to go to the bottom. They said, you go to the bottom. But what happens is when you go to a bigger mountain, you've already climbed that. So you're finding the way to go to that other part. And we are born of yin, yang, black, white, love, hate. It goes hand
We're in
in
a
hand.
world of duality on the earth.
We're in duality. So what happens is, all our mistakes, and we have to make them, because we don't know they are a mistake until you make it.
Yeah.
And many people have come to me for readings and they've gone, but I might make a mistake. I went, yeah.
It's like the full tarot card, isn't it? Like
Yes.
You have to jump off.
You've got to jump off
the bridge.
Jump off. That's what I said to them. Jump off the mountain, you can swim. They go, no. And when it comes to the tower is changing identification. You've been there. You've done it. Do you want to repeat? Do you want to repeat these patterns?
It just keeps coming into my head about like God's will. Do you know what I mean? Like you can sometimes like pray and like hope everything that goes right, and then it doesn't. But you always know that if you're like centered in that it was meant to happen for a reason, because it's taking you onto a new path.
Absolutely.
Like, no matter how painful it is, like God wants you in a certain place at a certain time, and if it wasn't for all these downfalls and the mistakes, like you wouldn't have taken a new path. So like there's no point avoiding the pain or avoiding things that are going to happen.
No pain, no gain.
It's interesting you talk about duality because I went on a journey of learning yoga, and we talked about the Upanishads, and we talked about Patanjali. I'm not saying these words right. Anyway, one of the things that come up in part of that teaching was I hit a point of how you see duality, and there is the worship of a god, and you look outside yourself, and you either you either worship that god and you believe that god's going to come to you, or the other part of duality is that you are God and he is in you, and it's which one do you believe and which one is your truth. So it's quite an interesting subject when we start talking about God or duality, and you know how we see that ultimate enlightenment and that energy. And I just think that at the end of the day, for me personally, I think you reach it with inside yourself because you are interconnected with the whole.
The I inside, I'm part of the whole.
It's like, even like taking it back to astrology, every sign has an opposite sign and they don't exist without each other. And you have the whole wheel. Like, what I always say to people is that, like, you have every single planet. You've got the whole zodiac wheel within you, within your chart. All these different areas of experience that you can have, and like you're never without all of them. You can't experience just one sector of life. And like while you dive into like one house more than the other, or while you experience one planet stronger than another planet or one sign, you still have all of them. And you can never have one without the other. You can never just have one. Like, they're all part of the life journey and they all reflect your life journey in these different areas of life.
Oh, I love it. I love all of that. But at the same time, it's like sometimes you sort of, oh God.
Yeah, oh fuck that Pluto. I don't want the Pluto. That's what I was like when I saw that I had Pluto so strong in my relationship sector. It's in my 7th house. It's opposite my sun, opposite my Venus. So your Pluto is opposite your moon, which is a very, again, pivotal point. So we spoke about this before. It's like hitting on a relationship point. Do you see what I mean? But like Pluto is about transformation. It's about those things that you don't want to see. It's about the hidden, the occult, those skeletons in your closet. But like without those things, you can't transform, because it's like that whole principle of alchemy that you have to reach rock bottom to be able to build yourself up.
The phoenix rising.
Exactly, yeah. And there's all these things that interlink.
And going on to like a bit of a different way of experiencing the signs. So over the last week, which is really mad because I remember most things that stay with me, and we've talked about animal power, and I would say in the last month I've experienced eagles, and even yesterday it came and flew over me, and I saw 3 about 2-3 weeks ago, and then, which is really bizarre, but for the last 3 days I've had a white cat cross my path.
Okay, yeah.
And
That's funny, I was just thinking about cats when you said about animal power, but yeah, carry on.
And I can honestly say, you always remember the black cat. I genuinely, I cannot remember out in the normal, like streets, remember seeing a white cat.
Yeah.
And over the last week, I've seen this white cat. I haven't seen it since. And it actually stood in the middle of the road, looked back at me.
Oh my God.
I still haven't researched it yet, but I'll have a look in a minute.
It's like purity, I think, and like cleansing. That's the word that came to me, like cleansing, like renewal.
Yeah, I mean, I just find it interesting that I've had the eagle and then the cat.
Yeah.
And you sort of like think about the 9 lives, and you think about how many times you come to the edge in your life.
And you're in the 9 in tarot as well.
Yes, and in that hermit. And it's definitely an inward journey, the hermit. And that's certainly what I'm having at the moment. And then the eagle, I did sort of touch on it and have a look, but it's quite a panoramic view that they saw from.
Well, I think that's what I was saying to you when I done your astrology reading, that it was all about seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And that's really what I would associate the eagle with. Like, it's also a bit of a predator bird, isn't it? That's the first thing that comes to mind. But it can see things from a higher perspective.
Yeah.
And that would be like the 9th house, and I think you were in a 9th house month, I think that's what it was.
Wow. Oh, yeah, I just, I've had so much go on over the last month within myself, and it's been like a roller coaster of that yin yang, up, down, over and out.
Thank you. Oh, that's nice. Love that. Well, I've had it, and what we was talking about earlier, and about friends, and like I have this repeating theme with friends, and even like partners, like any sort of partnership in my life, and it's sort of like, there are some people I speak to now and then I'll try and meet up with them or like get in contact, and it just won't happen. And I've had this with like ex-boyfriends and keep trying to make it happen, but it just won't. And like, it's when your energies aren't aligned. And then there's other people, they come into your life very naturally. You might not have spoken for years, but it's like your energy is aligned now, so like everything happens really easily.
Yeah, like
you're in the same space. Yeah, like,
and
everyone around you at whatever time is reflecting something within you, like they're in your life because you have some sort of resonance, like whatever it is, whether it's like a same wound, whether it's the same lesson, whether like you're just in that same like energy as them, they're all reflecting something.
When I was in the shop, I was doing the readings, and for the whole single week I had exactly the same readings, and it was driving me so mad that I said, I'm giving up readings. Don't book me in any more readings. I don't want them anymore. And then all of a sudden, this was a whole week. All of a sudden, I had something in my mind said, listen.
So what, they were coming to you with the same problem?
They was coming to me for me to recognise that I had this problem.
Yeah.
And wasn't dealing with it.
Like a reflection. And you definitely see that with people.
Yeah.
That's really interesting that you say that, because, you know, with people and those connections, in all cultures, there's all different ways of expressing it. And one of the girls that I'm working with at the moment is from China. And we was talking about relationships, and she said in their culture, on your little finger, because I was talking about the palmistry, and I was saying about the little finger, it's obviously linked to the mercury, it's linked to health, it's linked, and they also say that at some point the little finger's going to wear out and not actually be used, but it's also linked to the family in some ways, although the thumb's also linked to that too. She was saying that when you are meant to meet your soulmate, you have this red line, right, your red chakra, your base, right? She said you have this
That's
red.
What I mean. Am I going to meet my soulmate?
She said you have this red line. She said, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world or what's going on. She said when you meet that person, you both, they will find you, because that red line.
That goes.
And she said this red line is. It can't be broken. No. And they will find you, and you will find that. And she said, and some people may not find it in this lifetime, and you might have to go through many lifetimes to find each other, but you will.
At the end of the day.
Well, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I was quite enthralled, because it's so great, because when you sort of like start talking about those spiritual stories, in every culture, they interpret it differently, but it always lands to the same thing.
That's why, like, every symbol is subjective, because different cultures like portray different symbols as different things, don't they? Like, you've got like the feng shui and like the fish are lucky and things like that. Like, because obviously in ancient Chinese culture they've got so many like traditions, haven't they? Like healing modalities. They've got a lot of like superstitions. But for one culture something's really lucky, and for another it's really unlucky. So you have to really like trust your gut and trust what you feel about
it's like they hate 4s, but they love 8s.
And we, in the Western culture, we think 13's unlucky. But my dad, that's his lucky number, and my mum was the 13th girl he slept with. Sorry, Dad.
Oh, okay. A little bit too much information.
It's a bit promiscuous.
Oh yeah, it was only about 16 when he met her as well.
So, I hope you enjoyed this episode of an unfiltered afternoon with us 3 women from 3 generations. Be really interesting to see your response, and if you have any questions, like we say, Josie's going to give you all the platforms where you can contact us, where you can listen to this and also be involved.
Yeah, so we have first and foremost our website 111life.co.uk. That is one like the word, not the number. We have a YouTube where you can watch our video episodes. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. and many other platforms which you can find on
Facebook.
Buzzsprout. Oh god, I'm doing it wrong now. Yeah, we have had a drink, so I'm a bit mixed up. But yeah, we are on Facebook. We have a lovely Facebook group which you can join. It's private at the moment, but we will link all of these down below. We have Instagram, we have TikTok. Not as active on there, but we don't really care. Thank you.
And all I'd like to say now is one
life.
Lovely.
Catch it, put it in a jar to have and to hold. To save for later, you cannot trust it to come again. To wait for you to find a pen and fill the paper with the message